John.
Good afternoon.
Another beautiful Friday up
Hmm.
here in the Camellia City, hopefully down in San Diego also.
Yeah, it's always maybe a little overcast. We got some marine layer going on, but otherwise it's really nice.
And how's things in the practice?
Um, I've noticed that there's a lot of people catching on quicker um, in my in the demographic I work with, which is drug and alcohol outpatient. Um, People seem open and they're like getting it a lot quicker than I've been used to experiencing. And it's I'm hopeful. I'm excited actually. Um,
Do you attribute any of that to the stresses that the COVID situation puts on people? Or
yeah,
maybe,
I'm glad you brought that up because since COVID, um, especially the men I've been working with are at home, which they're used to being at work, and whatever their issues are, it's like in their face, and they're open to hearing about alternatives or solutions, which are all internal. Everything has to do with me, as it does with them and their perception and their filters and conditioning and family of origin issues that permeate their life, and nobody knows that there's anything from the past that's bothering them because everybody's let go, moved on. I'm okay, and then they find themselves alcoholic and got a good job, wife, two kids, and a picket fence, and they're sitting in an outpatient place somewhere trying to figure out what went wrong. So, yeah.
yeah, sure. So maybe some of us have a little more opportunity to be reflective. Um, Maybe that's and then of course if we are aware of what's going on inside ourselves, we might be able to see the impact of this extended, dramatic change in what we're used to and how we're coping with it, and then moving eventually from there to how it becomes an opportunity rather than
Yeah,
something wrong.
right. Yeah, they ever since I've started looking for help, whether it was therapy or counseling or group work, the catch line was the answer is inside you, and that was like a colloquial saying, and it's like it didn't mean a whole lot. Um, and through all the work I've done personally and the work I do in the community, I get it 100%. It's all inside me. It's accessing it. It's like figuring that out because in my mind, it's not my problem. It's everybody that I can blame or look at or obviously see to the casual observer that that person is a problem instead of my perception of that person as a problem instead of an opportunity for me to grow internally, which I now know to be true.
That's interesting. I'm teaching a class at my church on what we call practical metaphysics, and
Yeah.
Eric Butterworth is a famous Unity minister who wrote the book. And early on, he says, "This is not about changing the world. This is about changing how I see the world."
Exactly. Yeah. My perception.
So this has a noble heritage. I was thinking as you were sharing that all the way back to Socrates' injunction, "Know thyself."
Right.
And then the corollary of that, which I think is Shakespeare, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
there's a couple of hitches in all this, isn't there? And I'd like to talk about them today to the extent that we have time. One is this vast realm of preconceived emotional thought belief patterns that we generated to defend ourselves against trauma as little children. And secondly, that reticular activating system that became, in essence, the guardian
Yeah.
of that subconscious world. And it's how it is what we're actually working on shifting is
Yeah.
that reticular activating system. It's like a polarized sunglasses. This is the way it's keeping the light in, and we want to let the light in completely differently. And
Right.
so maybe we could begin there. I know you have a great way of characterizing the subconscious. Maybe we could start there.
Yeah. I learned about the reticular activating system. I was taking a training to be a facilitator in this program called Breaking Barriers. And it was designed for inmates so that they could create a foundation so when they got out, they had a foundation to start with. And it was about breaking through the wall of denial or perceived problems that people had. And in their second or third lesson, they brought up reticular activating system. It's a net-like group of cells that permeate the brain stem and the midbrain. And
So
it
these are nerve cells.
nerve cells. It's a actual physical thing internally in us, and it's hooked into the survival mechanism, fight, flight, freeze mechanism. And actually, I don't know if you could say they're both the same. They may be the same. The reticular activating system filters out non-essential information so that the individual can complete a task or stay focused on what his priority is. And they use this in the second session, how it filtered what you heard and saw to fit or be in alignment with your total experience. And then they moved on to goal setting. And after a while, I recognized that, goal setting and relapse prevention and learning how to set boundaries was useless if this reticular activating system was still safeguarding old information that said that as a child, the person who was supposed to love me also was the person I was receiving the pain from, so that when a person says, I love you and gets close, I would automatically back up. And I see this in the people I'm working with. Their reaction to, I want to say innocuous situations, just life situations were extreme. And I was working in the jail, so the individuals I was working with had such extreme reactions that it was punishable with some law or time spent in prison. And they had to rationalize where they found themselves. And a lot of them would tell me, I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway. And that made sense to them, but it happened to be one of the guys I was talking to. I asked him, how many times have you been in jail? He was a 55-year-old man. And he said 20 times. So he knew it was wrong and did it anyway 20 times. That just did not make any sense. So what I knew was that his reticular activating system was attempting to keep him safe, and the belief was internally that I'm defective. So if he actually succeeded, he would be in opposition to himself. And again, this is all subconsciously. And this reticular activating system thought it was a good idea for him to continue whatever behavior he was doing, like drunk driving or assault or disturbing the peace or taking somebody's stuff, that was the way he was going to survive. Whether he said he wanted to do that or not, this mechanism compelled him to follow this pattern of behavior because it believed he can survive. And he was surviving. He would survive. Every time he went to jail, he would survive it. So it was validating this old information. He'd go out saying, I'll never do that again, and then find himself back in jail. So, I mean, this is the core of intentional living. Explaining this mechanism, the logistics of how this reticular activating system is in charge of my well-being, and I find myself separated, isolated in some kind of destructive behavior time after time after time. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. It's irrational. And then for me to admit that I'm irrational is beyond the pale. I'm not going to say I'm crazy. I'm going to look out here and find reasons why this behavior is justified. Maybe not right, but at least justified. So I move away from the solution by trying to rationalize the behavior. And I want to offer my behavior, my violent behavior in my relationships. I would, what I know now, to dismiss, ignore, redefine somebody's reality. I would raise my voice, threaten. I would diminish, call names. And I would tell myself, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. And 2.5 seconds later, I would find myself again in that same pattern. So when I heard about this reticular activating system and how it has a focus, and I understood that the subconscious was not in my awareness and created 7/8 of my focus or desire or pattern, getting in here and shifting that information was the solution, not trying to fix everybody out here. And for me to do that, I have to be in my emotional body, because the information stored in this subconscious pool of information is all in the form of emotional frequency. Some of it I know detail to. Some of it I have a way to express it. Most of it is nonverbal or pre-verbal reactionary maneuvers to stay safe. So in this material that I've developed in Living Intentionally, there's a process where I can get into an emotional state by simply saying the truth of the outcome of this reticular activating system's filter system. If I find myself mean, and I really don't want to be mean, and I find myself there time after time after time, every time I criticize myself or judge myself or blame myself or said, there's no way I'm going to do this, I resisted that. It just got tighter and heavier and more directive to keep me in the old behavior. So if I just say the truth, I'm mean. And based on my experience in my childhood, based on my experience in my teen years, being ridiculed and ridiculing other people playing that game, meanness was actually a good choice to keep me safe. People stayed away from me. And the actual behavior was in alignment with the information. It was in alignment with my focus. People are not trustworthy. Get them before they get you. get yours before everybody else gets theirs. It was in alignment with that. And when I stopped judging it and just said the truth, I'm mean. In fact, I'm mean to the point of cruelty. There was something happened internally. I felt something. My body responded. And once I owned I'm mean, no blame, no judgment, I had a lucid moment, and my first thought was, I want to be kind. I want to be friendly. I want. I don't want to treat people mean. So I heard myself say, "It is my intent to be kind, or it's my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father." And what I understand now is that the frequency of the old information was validated. I mean, it goes, yeah, I've been doing a good job here. And this is that internal pool of information, looking out for my well-being, creating the meekness, which is in alignment with the trauma. When I said, I'm mean, and I didn't judge it, I didn't resist it, I sat with it, it opened me up to a different option. And when I heard myself say, it is my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father, I also felt that. I felt the relief, I felt the shift. And that intention melded with the be mean, because that's where you're safe, and went back down into my subconscious pool of information. And I simply started perceiving differently. I was aware of different things in my life. And I automatically shifted my behavior. Now, the first time I said I'm mean to the point of cruelty, I've been mean since. When I notice it, I go, there it is again. I'm mean. Take the breath. Things would come to my mind about what my dad said to me, or how my mom treated me, or what happened in the family, and it would relieve. Feeling is healing. And as a man in this society, it was demanded of me, feel, don't be a sissy, don't cry, get on with the job, quit complaining. And that's also another level of conditioning that kept me out of my emotional body. And I had no idea what emotions were anyway. And what I've discovered is they're not my actions, they're not my behavior, because everybody says, oh, that guy's angry. And they're not talking about the emotion, they're talking about the behavior. And I had my identity hooked up with my behavior. When I heard myself say I'm mean, validated that full of information, and I said, it is my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father, it just, something shifted. And it began my journey of introspection. And from that, I can say with honesty and gratitude that I'm a gentle, loving, empowering whole man.
So I have a couple questions off what you just shared. So it seems, if I'm getting this correctly, that there's something in the subconscious that essentially programs this reticular activating system to receive certain things and to filter out certain other things. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so the work that we're doing here is to access those programming elements, which are probably the psychological defense mechanisms that keep us safe, or that keep a little wounded child safe, that we can't reprogram the reticular activating system without accessing the bundle of feelings, thoughts, beliefs, whatever. And it's like you said, it's pre-verbal, it's non-verbal, it's verbal, it's a whole.
Let me say this trauma anticipates the trauma happening again.
Right.
So any little thing that reminded me or felt like what I felt as a child, which was scared, terrorized, helpless, frozen, any little thing in my current reality that triggered that whole energy of survive this came up, and it really wasn't what was happening in my current reality, but it was similar, and my reaction response was, I need to survive this. So I would withhold, or I'd get silent, or I'd blow up, or I'd start accusing other people, because that's what worked to keep people away from me. And I had no idea that it was hooked into old information. I thought I was a conscious, rational, intelligent man that could like figure this out and just like pull myself up by my bootstraps and carry on and quit acting like an idiot. And I did it time after time after time with that criticism in my head. What's wrong with you, John? How come you're doing this? And when I understood that it was in alignment with that trauma, and I stopped judging or criticizing myself and just simply said what the result was of the trauma, there was a relief, there was a raising of this old pain that I could now heal by simply paying attention to myself, feeling the pain. I didn't have to describe the pain or attach it to anything that's going on, simply feel it. And I was inspired to come up with an alternative. And I was fortunate enough to be in a situation with other men, or in a training where somebody said, what do you want? And I said, I want to be nice. And I remember saying that one time, and somebody said, nice people get hurt. So what else do you want? I want to be compassionate. Okay, create the intent, John. It is my intent to be compassionate. And it shifted, and I just found myself more aware, lucid in moments where I would have been reactive, and able to deal with life situations without the reaction. I would see the situation. It may have reminded me of trauma, but I knew that was happening. So I would have a moment, take a breath, and in that moment, I was able to access this new information. Actually, it was there for me, and I found myself doing something different. Everything I do, even today, is a direct result of my experience, and 7/8 of my experience is in my subconscious. Right now, there's a lot of introspection in there, of accountability in there, of not just meanness, but arrogance, entitled, mean, controlling, and needy. And I've got a laundry list of character defects that I've owned. And in the owning of them without judgment, I was able to choose another thing, create the intent, and then that became the new default mode in this reticular activating system. So people look at me and say, how do you stay so centered? How do you hold that energy? And reticular activating system, the same answer. Why was I so reactive and threatening and violent? Reticular activating system. Why am I so calm, centered, and non-judgmental? Reticular activating system. I work on my reticular activating, on that subconscious pool of information. I am intentional about what I want in my day. I wake up and it is my intent to have a productive, enjoyable, fruitful day. And that's what I get, because that's what I'm programming myself to be. It's almost like I took the blame for my old behavior. You'd think I would be able to take the credit for my good behavior. And it's all the same. It's coming from the same place. It's who I am now. It's actually who I was before the trauma, and who that authentic person is coming out, because I'm paying attention to the trauma. And I say trauma, people, it's like trauma, they think of, major stuff, war, combat, being told that the artwork I did at 7 looked stupid is trauma. It's a bit of information about me that I personalized and said, I don't want to be stupid anymore, so I'm not showing people my artwork. And now it's like I revel in sharing myself with people. Before I was closed up. I didn't want you to know anything about me. Now, anything you want to know, I'll let you know, because I know that it's in my benefit, to be honest.
So the experience that I have with this dynamic that you're talking about is that the reticular activating system is hidden, and I can begin to learn about it by seeing its effects and working backward. So I'll give you an example. You and I were in a meeting earlier this week, and I said something to someone else in the meeting that it was a jab, and I felt in my body after I delivered the jab that I had done something nasty and cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt remorseful before I thought about it.
Yes.
That's a shift, because in the old days, just to follow along what you said about yourself, in the old days, something that person said triggered my sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was to defend myself from being close to this person or letting this person come close to me. Again, without having any awareness of that, I wouldn't have felt the remorse that I felt. I would have felt angry, or I would have felt devilish.
Yes.
Some kind of energy. I would just get energized by it. So I wanted to revisit a little bit what you said about this triggering process, because the triggering process is so automatic. Whether my reticular activating system is keeping a little wounded boy safe, or it's now in the service of an adult who is intentionally living, it's still pretty automatic.
Yeah. Yeah. In dangerous situations, this mechanism takes over.
Right.
Getting it in a close automobile accident where you don't remember what you did, but you're safe. You turn the wheel a little bit, you hit the brake a little bit, you took your foot off the brake. All this stuff was reticular activating system that's charged with keeping you safe. This mechanism, they've done studies that it can perceive before you can recognize, cognate. It's already happened before it comes into your mind. It's that quick. And it's also mixed up with our survival. I mean, if you touch fire, you get burned. So you learn that even just a little bit of heat, you move back. And if I had my hand that was going to get burnt on a hot plate or something, it would actually sense the heat before I even touched it, and then I would be alerted after the fact. So it gets mixed up with realistic survival needs, reactions that are necessary for me, just for my physical safety. And then we throw in emotional trauma. So now the emotional nuance of a situation is similar to, like, you're feeling a little bit of heat, and the automatic reaction is get out of there, it's not safe. People who love you hurt you. So I actually heard a woman say, I love you, and I got a physical pain in what I consider my liver area. It was just like a stab. And that was odd. It was interesting to me that I had that body reaction. And I don't think it was a coincidence. I think there was something about this situation that was similar to my relationship with my mother or my father, and my body responded by repelling. That doesn't make any sense unless I understand that I have this directive that when something similar to this happens, get away from it in my subconscious. And the more I do this accountability work, the more I know that my reaction, my instant reaction, if it's something that I say I don't want to do, or I find that's not in alignment with my current reality, is something held in that subconscious pool that's still active. And through the accountability process, I can go, I'm afraid. In this instance where I felt the pain, just name, it may not be the feeling, but as close as I can get, I'm afraid, and just allow myself to be afraid. And in that fear, in that validation, this reticular activating system opens up a little bit, and I can be lucid about, oh, that was from my past. That's an old response. It's an old reaction, and I can take a breath and go, I'm safe now, and then re-engage in the conversation. Or for me, it's there's one thing I'm still struggling with. If I'm up late at night and I'm like doing something and I drop something or make a loud noise, I startle. And every time I do that, I get it right away. That's from my family. It's not a big deal. I mean, I dropped a fork. It's like, but my body reacts as if, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And I just simply go, okay, I'm safe now. That's old information. And this startle response is waning. I would love to say it's gone. And the more I pay attention to it, the less startled I become. The startle effect is loosening, easing, and I intend to pay attention to it till it goes away.
I have the exact same dynamic. Drop something, knock something over, uh, have an open cupboard door stand up, hit my head. I mean, all those things.
Yeah.
And my reaction is, I'm going to get killed.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so automatic in the body.
Yeah.
And I have the awareness that this again is a startle reaction formation from before I mean, I don't even know that I can go back and find out when the first time I ever experienced that was. That's how deeply embedded this is.
Mm-hmm.
And now, half the time when it happens, I just start laughing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's that automatic response again.
Well, I've moved from, and what I'm hearing you say is I've moved from criticism, like, what the hell are you doing? Don't do that. That's stupid. What are you, clumsy? To, okay, there it is again. And it's kind of like nurturing a little kid. Yeah, it's difficult holding on to forks when, you got your hand full of Cheerios. It's going to happen. Instead of, you dumb little shit, what's wrong with you? Don't you know how to hold a fork? Whatever it might be. And that's in adult children of alcoholic 12-step meeting, we call that reparenting. Loving parent. Be nice to yourself. Quit holding yourself to some standard that nobody can meet.
Right.
And yeah.
But if I'm honest with myself, the other half of the time when that happens, instead of blaming myself, I blame God. It's like,
Okay.
you're not supposed to hurt me.
Right. That's an
Stop
easy.
hurting me.
You're supposed to be nice. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be all loving. Where's my unconditional love?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
That's another indoctrination. Depending on which religion you grew up in, Catholics and Jews have a reputation for inducing guilt.
Catholic.
Yeah, I'm Catholic too. Yeah, everything you do is some kind of sin, and they even got classified. But the big ass sins, the mortal ones, you're going to hell right now. You better get to the confessional, and then the venal ones, and the venal ones you can play with, pardon with, and they're only venal. So,
But let's pursue that a little bit, because it may be the case that Catholics and Jews have a particular capacity for inflicting guilt, but the truth of the matter is that all Western civilization comes from the Garden of Eden myth, which is that somehow we collectively disobeyed God.
yep, original sin.
We betrayed the parent,
Yep,
and we must be punished for it.
yep, yep.
And so part of the challenge that I think we have with this reticular activating system is it's not only in me, nestled in this group of nerve cells, but somehow it's also in the collective subconscious.
Yes.
How that mechanism works, that's of great fascination to me, is because I'm not sharing your nervous system.
No.
I'm not sharing a nervous system with anyone else, except that all humans have the same nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has the same clump of cells that creates the reticular reactivating system, just like it creates the human brain and all the organs and so forth. So it's fascinating to me, and that's part of when I laugh and I yell at God for hurting me. Part of that is an acknowledgement that I'm in a collective consciousness, or actually a subconsciousness, because the collective consciousness almost never is aware of itself as
Right.
a collective singularity.
Right.
And so, as I've shared with you before, I believe this is part of the power of accountability, is it allows me to get in touch with my collective humanity, because everyone experiences childhood trauma.
Yes.
And everyone has to survive. There's no exceptions to these rules. So when it slowly dawns on me, oh, this is my humanity. And everyone in my life has the same dynamic.
Yes.
Now, everyone gets to tell a slightly different story because everyone's specific experience is unique to that person. But as a generic dynamic, it's all the same. Which
Yeah.
is why a myth has such power, because it's true for everybody
Yes.
in that culture. And everybody can identify with it.
Yeah. Carl Jung talked about the collective unconsciousness, collective subconscious, and it affects us all, and it's a part of us coming to a new awareness that we are connected at some level, and knowing that it is paramount to me to do my work, because if I'm part of that, that means I affect that by either participating in it or choosing to become authentic and genuine in my experience, and owning all that dark stuff that I don't want anybody to know about me. And that, in turns, if we're all connected, affects the whole.
Well, it's interesting, if you're willing to indulge me here another second, the subset of the Western myth that is not universal. So the Garden of Eden thing is fairly universal. The Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions all start there.
Yeah.
But Christianity goes into its own direction and says the solution to the problem is to recognize the divinity of all human beings. So that what you just said is actually the actuation of salvation, which is Jesus says, the Father and I are one, and greater things than this you will do.
Mhm.
So that accountability is essentially my willingness to own my creative truth. I'm a creator of my life. God is the creator of all life, and I'm participating in this creative activity
Yes.
by virtue of this identification or this identity between the divine and the human. Now, not all religions go there. The Christianity is the only one that makes that very bold claim, which is why it's not part of the universal Western mythology, but it still impacted the whole world because it took hold in Europe, and out of Europe came the Enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly, in the Muslim variation of this, the Prophet said that salvation, or the way that we become um, cleansed and happy, is to support the whole community being that. So the Muslim the Muslim approach is in the community. So if the community isn't clean, nobody's clean, is
Yeah.
basically the Islamic message, which is why there's always such an emphasis in Islam on everybody's in. When I had a dear friend who was Iranian in origin, and he went and made the Hajj in Mecca, which is one of the five pillars of Islam, is to make the Hajj once in your life. And he said there were 1 million people in Mecca, and everyone dresses exactly the same. Everyone wears a white garment, so that we emphasize that we're all part of this community, and there's no individual distinction allowed. And he said, I can't tell you how that moved me to feel that I was safe in this community, because everybody in the community agreed to create that safety.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the various ways that in the West we responded to this original sin challenge. And I see accountability as the beginning of a new way, which is not new, but it has very practical steps by which I can move toward ending my belief there's something wrong with me, which is essentially the Garden of Eden challenge.
Right. And the idea of original sin and how it's been described in, I don't know about all Christian and Catholic religion, is that the only way out is through somebody else. I can't do it myself. I'm a peon. I'm a worthless, decrepit piece of flesh, and the
Sinner.
best I can do, best I can do, is have this guy save me. When I understand now that I'm part of my own salvation, and salvation doesn't mean I'm because I'm so miserable, I have to wait till I die to go to heaven. If I sacrifice enough, and if I do enough, and if I self-deprecate myself enough, I can go to heaven. Another teaching in the Christian religion is the kingdom of God is spread upon the earth, and men do not see it, and that's the sin. And sin means missing the mark, or having the wrong focus, if you will. So my focus most of my life was me, my gun rack, my gun, stay away from me, to where now it's that was my sphere of concern. Now my sphere of concern is global, that everybody matters, I matter, and that what I do affects that. And it is my intent that I see that today, that I feel that today. One of the ways I manifested that is not buying into the belief that you work till you're 65, retire, and then do what you want to do. I'm doing what I want to do now, and I started at 50 years old. Screw this. And retire from what? Retire from being authentic? It's ludicrous. Retire, buy a Winnebago and go fishing. You know, that lasts until about the 10th fish, and then it's like boring. And I get to enjoy this life. I get to revel in this creation. I get to feel and have fulfillment and interact with the people I love in meaningful ways. And it is my intent that I continue to do that.
Isn't that what you just shared? Isn't that an example of the way one of the principles that we use in this work works, which is I'm always getting what I want.
Yeah.
So when you were doing the guns and the pickup truck and keeping people away from you, that's what little Johnny wanted.
Yeah.
And so, and the reticular activating system was in service of making sure that the world we saw was was in alignment with this unconscious or subconscious want or desire to be safe.
Yeah. And for me, it was at a distance.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for me, it's like, I'm all alone. I'm going to, you only can come so close, then that's it.
Right.
And so as we do this work, we are creating what we want consciously.
Yes.
In light of that awareness of what the little kid energy was putting out and creating as a defense, no blame, no judgment. That's exactly the right thing that kid needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be 69 next month. A 69-year-old man doesn't need that anymore. And so I'm learning to create an intention using the power of intention to shift my reticular activating system to serving what I want now. And so you started in your 50s to articulate this intention of what you wanted, and that's how it manifests. Was you kept at it, and you started to see when you got triggered or when something caused upset, that this could actually be a channel for you to return or renew your intention.
And
Through consciousness.
And heal that old trauma. Frame it. And I know that I will always have 7/8 of my experience in myself. Anything I do comes from me, whether it's conscious or subconscious. So wherever I find myself, it's now for me, it's an opportunity to maybe dig deeper where I missed or is still gnawing at me or is still active. And I can do that by my reactive response in the moment and go, oh, there it is. Oh, that was dismissive. I just dismissed that person and now I know for no reason other than that's what saved my little kid. And I own it. That was dismissive. And I take a breath and I feel that original pain. And I say it is my intent to be attentive or kind or gracious or engaging, whatever the situation dictates.
Right. You know, you said something earlier I wanted to come back to, which in the 12-step programs, we call the work recovery.
Yes.
And you made a comment about my state before the trauma started. And my sense is that's what we're recovering, which is that innocence and that gladness to be alive that we were born with before conditions started to wear away against this unconditional sense of well-being.
Yes. Yeah.
And that coheres with that Western myth, because that's what the Garden of Eden was the symbol of. that
Yeah.
original state of innocence, but not just innocence, it's also the state of all possibility.
Yes. Yeah. It's a fulfilling, and it never ends. It continues to be expansive. One of my teachers put this in words for me is people are never satisfied. You could make them king of the earth, and they do that for a while, and then they go, well, who is there anybody on Mars that I can be king of? It's like, we want it all. And I can tell you, I want it all. I'm not stopping. Every time I consider where I'm at to where I came from, and I see the growth, I don't commit. I'm going to do whatever I did to manifest that expansion again, which is for me being accountable, being aware, learning new ways to say to people about this mechanism, so that it's, you just never know when I'm going to say, I never know when I'm going to say what it is, and that people's lights turn on. So I'm open to being expressive and learning, to continue to learn more about this so I can be more articulate.
I like to say that every human being is a universe unto him or herself.
Yeah.
And the universe, not only is it, I mean, technically it's not infinite in expanse, but practically it is. And given this 7/8 dynamic, it means that no matter how long I live, I'll never come anywhere close to examining everything that's there. And so it is true that this endless opportunity. And I would assert that the intention to have it all is in service of letting that universe in.
Yes.
And let the universe be my ally, although the universe and I are one, but to really put that infinity in service of being in the kingdom of heaven now, if you want to mix metaphors there.
Right. I heard this from Eckhart Tolle. A lot of the discussion is about losing your ego, or losing the pride, or the self. And his statement was, it's not about losing the ego, losing and by ego I mean my uniqueness, my experience, my contribution as a being that is on the planet now, never has come together like this in history, and it is now, and it never will be again in the future. This is of value. I have something specific to create through this particular experience, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to find out whatever that is. In fact, one of my intents is to manifest whatever it is I'm here to manifest this lifetime. It's my intent to do that. That's my participation, and it gives me a sense of meaning. Not that I need a sense of meaning. What does it give me? Belonging. I'm contributing.
Well, and I would suggest that it gives you a sense of meaning that you create and feel satisfied with. That's each of us has a sense of meaning that we're satisfied with.
Yeah.
And I would also suggest that the little kid that's got defense, these great powerful defense mechanisms, is living within that meaning.
Yes.
But it's not a meaning that's articulated verbally, it's a meaning that's articulated emotionally. And again, what we're doing here is, another way to say it is, we're rewriting the story.
Right.
We're rewriting the story, we're writing a bigger story.
Mm-hmm.
We had an experience, I want to illustrate this, we had an experience last night in the Rusty Nail Club meeting where someone was working on, she was working on a particular energy, and when she got to what do you want, she said, I want a sense of well-being.
Mm.
And we said, okay. And then as she talked about it, she said, well, what I really want is exuberance, and we said, try that. I intend to experience exuberance. And it was the whole room lit up when she was willing to go for well-being. That's great. How about exuberance?
Yeah. 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 I love it when something like that happens, when somebody shines through it. I picture it as this explosion of feeling and connection, capacity to connect. I even equate it to a miniature Big Bang. It's like it's the beginning of a whole new universe.
Well, I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
That was my experience as I witnessed this, and there was one guy got up and started dancing.
uh,
You,
wow.
you know, when we allow ourselves to be in the moment and we allow ourselves to let go of this automatic belief that we're limited, and we claim exuberance. Um, there's another E word, ecstasy. There's a lot of great words that are really descriptive of the state of joy.
Enthusiasm is another one,
Enthusiasm,
and yeah,
exactly.
that's a reference to God.
Yeah,
It's a reference of God expression, divine expression.
yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Ecstatic comes from the two Greek words, which means out of the static, unchanging.
You know, my experience is um, I'm completely out of my mind, and I'm in this field of experience, and it's like in our conversations, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I listen to you, and then when I hear the pause or I have this, and I just hear myself talking about this, and it's a place of I call it the zone. It's where I want to live. And it happens in these conversations. It happens when I'm a facilitator, and it happens during my life. And then there's moments where I'm self-conscious. I'm thinking about, oh, I can't call her, I can't say that, and I'm out of it. And it's an opportunity for me to heal some more. So
Well, no, we can move to a place where we see all of those things that in the Christian terminology are called, like you said earlier, sin.
right,
Sin is always now an opportunity for salvation, aka when I notice I was out of touch with my awareness, or I was just into something small or narrow, it's just an opportunity to create the opposite
yeah,
and to
it's an
affirm and to be grateful that, this is the way I am as a human being. That's cool.
it's an opportunity to refocus on the mark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like to say, I've never been able to fully master this psychologically because I'm a very competitive person. So that means if I'm playing a card game or I'm playing volleyball or whatever, is I don't want to lose. And losing has a sense of shame and negativity. And so I was working with that one day, and I thought, you know what? Losing is a gift that permits winning. Because
Yeah. Uh, um,
so I was just trying to reframe. It's like, losing and winning are just they're just elements of the same activity, playing.
right. They're adjustments of the result of participating.
Right.
And one of my ideas, hold on a second. Go ahead and talk for a minute.
Okay. That was, like I said, I've never really quite, it's like if I lose something, I can't say, oh, I'm serving the winner here. I haven't got quite to, isn't this wonderful? But it's still a shift in consciousness. And then it becomes a springboard for creating something else.
Yeah. Can we like bring this to a close? I've got some
Yep.
people around.
Sure.
They're gonna start a project, and there's a lot of noise gonna happen.
Okay.
So yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
I'm grateful to have this conversation again. This reticular activating system is insidious and complicated and deceitful, and then once you get the logistics of it, it is the way out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was hobbling us becomes something that enables us.
Yes.
Well, thank you, John. As always, thanks for a great conversation. And we didn't get to half the things I jotted down here, as always.
Well, we got food for the next one.
Exactly. All right. Well, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.